Watch this every morning, and you will begin to notice something quite strange. The world which once seemed indifferent to your hopes, your work, your quiet desires, it begins to shift. It bends. It rearranges itself slowly, subtly, to accommodate the image you hold in your mind. Now that may sound like magic or philosophy dressed up in motivation, but it is neither. It is law, immutable, undeniable, as dependable as gravity, and yet it's a law so few ever come to understand, let alone use. The great tragedy of most men and women is not failure, it is the quiet, unnoticed life lived on autopilot, day in, day out, waking up to the same thoughts, the same complaints, the same minor hopes and petty fears, not knowing, never truly realizing that they are the cause, that they are in fact the ones commanding the orchestra without even lifting a hand. What I want to tell you this morning is simple. You do not have to live that way. You do not have to repeat the same day for the next 10, 20, 40 years. You can bend the world in your direction, but to do that you must first bend your thoughts. And so I want to ask you to listen carefully. Not just with your ears, but with the part of you that's hungry for more, hungry for truth, hungry for freedom. And if that hunger is alive in you, if you sense there's something waiting for you on the other side of your old patterns, then I'd like to ask you for a small act of commitment. Take a moment now to like this video, and if it resonates with something inside you, subscribe. Not just for more words like these, but because every time you do, you reinforce to yourself, this is the path I've chosen. This is the voice I will follow. This is the truth I will live by. Make that a habit, not just clicking buttons, but acting as though your very next decision creates the next hour of your life. Because in truth, it does. You see, the world doesn't bend to people who wait. It doesn't bend for those who hope. It bends for the man or woman who expects it to bend and who lives each morning with that expectation. And expectation is not arrogance, it is faith. It is seeing with the mind what is not yet seen by the eyes and acting as though it were already so. Let me say that again. You act as though it were already so. That's not theory, that's the foundation. Now let's talk about how this world-shaping power works. And you may be surprised to hear that it begins with silence. Not noise, not action, not striving, but silence. The first act of power is not to move, but to see clearly, with no resistance, the kind of life you intend to live. This is what separates the 5% from the 95%. Most people wake up and the first thing they do is flood their minds with other people's thoughts. The news, social media, chatter, and by the time they've had their coffee, their mind is already clouded by someone else's weather. They walk into the day soaked in confusion, and they wonder why success seems slippery, why peace always dances just beyond reach. But the 5%, they begin with vision. They begin with stillness. Before the world makes a claim on their mind, they claim it for themselves. They sit, they listen, and they ask, what do I want to become? Not just what do I want to do or have, but what kind of man, what kind of woman, what values, what spirit, what legacy. And in doing this, they light a fire. A quiet fire invisible to most, but unshakable. And from that fire they begin to speak new commands to their mind, and the mind obeys. Then the world follows. You may ask, why does this work? How can something so simple, mere thought, shape a world made of concrete, steel, bills, people, problems? Because everything man made in your life was first a thought. Look around you. The chair, the screen, the building, the clothes you wear, all were once imagined by someone no different from you. The only difference is, they made their thoughts real. They persisted. They didn't think once and then doubt. They thought and then thought again, and again, and again, until thought turned into habit, habit turned into behavior, and behavior turned into results. The man who wakes up and says, today I create, will walk a very different road from the man who says, let's see what today brings. And those two roads do not meet. One bends the world, the other is bent by it. So I will ask you again, what do you expect this day to become? Not what do you wish, but what do you expect? If you say, I expect abundance, progress, and peace, then you have planted a seed. But the planting must be followed by care, and care is what most forget. They plant one idea in the morning, then uproot it by noon with worry, complaint, fear, and so the soil yields nothing. Every morning, the first words in your mind must be those of command, not complaint. Don't ask the world to show you favor. Announce to it who you are becoming. Speak with faith, not as a wish, but as an identity. Say aloud, I am one with wealth and wisdom, free of fear and doubt. Say it now. Say it again. Not to convince the world, but to convince the only one who truly needs convincing, yourself. When you repeat a phrase with emotion, when you pair it with vision, you do more than speak. You program. You etch it into the operating system of your mind, and your subconscious, which never argues, begins to act as though it were true. This is not mysticism. It is mental law. If you don't take command of your mind, someone else will. A stranger, a system, a memory, and you'll live someone else's life, wondering why peace never comes. So take the wheel back. The mind is the most powerful tool in the universe. It can imprison or liberate, build or destroy, but it cannot be idle. It will serve whoever gives it the most vivid instruction. Will that be you or the world? And I want you to understand this deeply. It is not the size of your vision that changes your life. It is the clarity. Most people spend more time deciding what to eat than deciding what to pursue, and then they wonder why nothing moves. Clarity gives your mind a target. It sharpens your emotions. It aligns your actions. But clarity only comes to those who sit with themselves long enough to want one thing, not 10, not everything. One image, one result, one transformation that makes everything else either easier or irrelevant. So I ask you right now, what is your one? Is it mastery, freedom, a calm spirit, a stronger body, a new business? Do not answer casually. Your mind is listening. And once it believes you, it begins to filter every sound, sight, and decision to move you closer. That's why people say the world begins to shift. It's not the world that changes, it's your perception and your decisions that change your place in it. You are no longer reacting, you are directing. You are no longer chasing approval, you are giving commands. And the world, like a river around a stone, begins to bend around you. And so each morning, I ask you to do this. Before you pick up your phone, before you speak to anyone, sit still and picture the life that bends the world in your favor. Picture how you walk, how you speak, how you work, how you rest. Picture the moment where you say, I have arrived. Now ask, what would a man like that do this morning? What would a woman like that decide today? Then become it. Become that version. Not next year, not when conditions improve, but now. The man who waits for proof will live without it. The man who lives the proof before it's visible creates it. That is the strange secret. That is the path of the 5%. And you can begin that path this very morning. All it takes is a decision. All it takes is a voice, yours. You will become what you repeatedly affirm with emotion, clarity, and faith. Speak the law, act the law, become the law, and the world will bow to your conviction. Now repeat it after me and type it in the comments to seal it in your subconscious. I am one with wealth and wisdom, free of fear and doubt. There is something you must understand if you are ever to attract real wealth, not fleeting gains, but lasting abundance. It is this: money is not a reward for activity. It is a reward for alignment. That is to say, it does not flow to those who simply work the hardest, nor to those who hustle the loudest. It flows to those who are internally aligned with the laws that govern it. And this alignment is invisible to the eye, but unmistakable in its effects. Just as the sun rises with or without your approval, wealth rises in the lives of those who honor the principle of cause and effect. If you sow confusion, you will reap chaos. If you sow clarity, you will reap movement. But if you sow faith in yourself, in your direction, in your decisions, then you will reap compound blessings. Why is it that two men with the same tools, the same education, and the same opportunities can produce wildly different results? It is because one man is aligned with truth, while the other is lost in fear. And fear, my friend, is the great thief. It robs you before a dollar ever touches your hands. It convinces you that your dream is too big, that your time has passed, that others have already taken what you could have built. But that is a lie. And the sooner you cast out fear from your internal vocabulary, the sooner the current of prosperity will begin to flow toward you. Now you may wonder, what does alignment look like? What does it feel like? It feels like calm certainty. It looks like a man who knows where he's going. He does not rush, but he also never stalls. He takes action, but only after seeing clearly. He says no when it does not serve his path. He speaks with fewer words, but those words carry weight. His posture is not arrogance, it is inner order. This man or woman is not loud but unmistakable, and when they enter a room, they do not need to announce their value. It speaks through their presence. That is alignment. And it comes not from luck or genetics or personality, it comes from daily practice, from choosing each morning to clear the mind of excess noise and reset the compass of your intention. Because without intention, even effort becomes wasted motion. Alignment, therefore, is not passive. It is the most active thing you can do. It is the internal architecture of success, unseen but unshakable. And if you wish to begin today, you must first understand this principle. Until your subconscious beliefs support your goals, you will always self-sabotage. You may wish for wealth, but if deep down you believe it is wrong to have it, you will push it away. You may strive for growth, but if your identity is still wrapped in struggle, you will stay small. This is why mindset is not an accessory. It is the foundation. Imagine trying to build a skyscraper on sand. That is what happens when people try to change their outer world without first mastering their inner world. The foundation cracks, the structure collapses. But when the mind is built on truth, on vision, on discipline, then the external begins to reflect that solidity. People will say you are lucky. They will say you have momentum. But what you really have is alignment. So begin today not by asking, how can I make more money? But by asking, do I truly believe I deserve more money? And if the answer is yes, then act like it. Not with arrogance, but with authority. Because nothing moves until you believe it should. Now let me offer you something concrete. A law that governs all meaningful transformation. I want you to write it down, and if it resonates, comment it below to anchor it deep into your subconscious. Here it is. My outer world bends to my inner certainty. Say it again. Feel the truth of it. Everything you are experiencing right now, for better or worse, is a mirror of the certainty or confusion within you. And that should not frighten you. It should empower you, because it means you are not a victim of the economy or circumstance or other people's choices. You are the architect, the builder, the commander. But that command must begin in your mind, and it must be practiced. Because the mind is not loyal to your potential, it is loyal to your patterns. And if your patterns are weak, distracted, or contradictory, the results will reflect that. But if your patterns are sharp, consistent, and aligned with purpose, then you will begin to see the world change. Not all at once, but undeniably. You see, we live in a world where people are addicted to outcomes. They want the prize before the process. They want the money without the meaning, the body without the discipline, the influence without the internal work. But life does not function that way. Just as a seed must push through darkness before it touches the sun, so must your mind push through resistance before results appear. And most people quit in the dark. They plant a goal on Monday, doubt it by Thursday, and abandon it by next week. And then they wonder why nothing sticks. But those who understand the law, they stay. They water their thoughts daily. They protect their vision from doubt. And in time they receive what they planted. Because the law is clear. You do not get what you wish for. You get what you prepare for. So I ask you again, what are you preparing for? With your words, your habits, your silence, your morning routine, what are you preparing for? There is a reason that repetition is sacred. Because the mind does not believe what it hears once. It believes what it hears often. This is why mantras work. Why affirmations matter. Not because they are magic, but because they interrupt the default. And the default for most people is fear. Repeating thoughts of lack, thoughts of worry, thoughts of unworthiness. So when you speak words of power, consistently, intentionally, you begin to create a new default. One that is not rooted in reaction, but in authorship. So again, say the words, my outer world bends to my inner certainty. Say it not as a wish, but as a recognition, as a law. Because once you believe it, everything you do begins to change. The way you walk, the way you invest your time, the way you speak, the way you respond to setbacks, all of it begins to orbit the new center of gravity you've placed in your mind. And that center is belief. Now some will say, but I don't feel certain. I still feel doubt. And to that I say, of course you do. Doubt is part of the path. But certainty is not the absence of doubt. It is the decision to keep moving anyway. And each time you move in the direction of your goal despite the doubt, you prove to yourself that you are no longer ruled by emotion. You are ruled by principle. And that, more than anything, is what money respects. Because money, like nature, rewards discipline. It rewards order. It rewards alignment. And when you act in alignment with the version of yourself that already has what you desire, you begin to collapse the gap between you and that future. You are no longer just hoping. You are becoming. And so I leave you with this practice. Each morning for the next 30 days, wake up and write one sentence. I am aligned with wealth, clarity, and service. Say it aloud. Feel it. Then act in accordance with it. Make decisions as if it were already true. Speak as if it were already true. And what you will find is that your external life begins to respond to the internal decision. Not because of magic, not because of luck, but because you have finally become consistent enough to be trusted by the laws of abundance. And once the law trusts you, it does not delay. It does not deny. It delivers. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must stop asking for success and start assuming it. And that moment begins not with a dramatic gesture, but with a quiet shift in identity. It begins when you stop saying, I want, and start saying, I am. You see, the man who chases money with desperation pushes it away with equal force. He reveals by his very grasping that he does not believe it belongs to him. And life responds to belief, not effort alone. The man who says, I will become wealthy may have good intentions. But the man who says, I am a wealthy thinker, a structured creator, a steward of abundance, that man is already walking with wealth long before it shows up in his accounts. Because money arrives where it feels understood. It stays where it is treated with respect, and it multiplies where it finds order. That is why I say, don't chase. Align. Don't wish. Prepare. Don't beg. Build. The world may not applaud these silent shifts at first, but the laws of life do, and they reward the man who moves as though what he seeks is already his. When a man speaks from identity instead of longing, he attracts without needing to pursue. And this is not arrogance, it is congruence. A land does not announce its power, it simply is. A tree does not strain to grow, it grows because that is its nature. You too must decide your nature. Not based on your past, not based on your current circumstances, but based on the image you choose to hold. The question is not, what do you have? The question is, what are you becoming? Because the man who is becoming consistent will soon have consistency. The man who is becoming clear will soon live in clarity. The man who is becoming abundant will soon see abundance reflected in every corner of his life. But the process is not passive. It requires commitment, repetition, and emotional intensity. If you think a new thought once and return to your old language by noon, nothing changes. But if you dwell in the new identity, if you repeat it with feeling, if you protect it from contradiction, then life has no choice but to mirror it back to you. So let me offer you a new phrase. A law. One that you can carry with you, speak aloud each morning, and if it resonates with your soul, comment it now to write it into your subconscious. Here it is. I, ACT from identity, not from need. Say it with power. Say it with your chest. Because this shift is everything. The beggar needs, the builder acts, the victim waits, the creator moves. And when you begin to move from identity, your decisions become easier. You no longer ask, should I do this? You already know what a wealthy man would do. You no longer debate whether to wake up early, to invest in yourself, to plan your day. That question has already been answered by your identity. That is why this is the root. Everything else, the habits, the income, the peace, they grow from this soil. And if the soil is strong, the fruit will appear. Not overnight, but inevitably. You may say, how can I act as someone I'm not yet? And to that I say, you already do. Every day you act out the beliefs you hold about yourself. Some of them were handed to you, some you never questioned. But make no mistake, your current behavior is already based on identity. The only question is whether that identity was chosen or inherited. And if you did not choose it, then it is time to. Because only a chosen identity creates a chosen future. Think of the actor who takes on a role. He studies it, he practices the voice, the posture, the mindset, and in time the audience forgets it's a performance. They believe the character. Now understand this, your subconscious is the audience. If you act the part long enough, it begins to believe. And once it believes, it begins to organize your habits, your emotions, your thoughts around that identity. And when your subconscious is aligned, your life follows, not by chance but by law. Let us not forget the paradox that shapes all great transformation. To become something new, you must first act as though you already are. That's not pretense, it's preparation. You cannot wait to feel confident before you speak like a leader. You cannot wait to feel wealthy before you think like a steward. You must speak, think, act, and decide from the identity you intend to live in. And yes, in the beginning it will feel uncomfortable. That's the point, because identity is not confirmed by comfort, it is forged through repetition, through choosing the higher role even when the emotions haven't caught up yet. But they will. And once they do, your energy becomes undeniable. People will say you've changed, that something's different about you. They won't be able to name it, but they'll feel it. And that difference is the identity you chose when no one was watching. When the old version of you begged for comfort, but the new version insisted on alignment. Now let's bring this back to money. Why is identity so important for wealth? Because money responds to belief, not to desperation. A man who does not believe he is worthy of holding great value will either reject it or misuse it. And the world, which is far more intelligent than we give it credit for, will not send lasting wealth to a man who cannot hold it with respect. You must become the vessel first. You must expand your ability to receive, not just want, to organize, not just dream, to multiply, not just spend. And these abilities grow from identity, from seeing yourself not as a man who might be wealthy, but as one who must be, because he has built the habits, the character, the structure to hold it. And when you think this way long enough, something strange happens. You stop fearing money. You stop chasing it. You start living in a way that makes its arrival obvious. Let me ask you this. If money doubled in your life tomorrow, would your current habits support it? Would your emotional state remain stable? Would your routines, your friendships, your calendar reflect someone who was ready? If the answer is no, then you are not blocked by opportunity. You are blocked by identity. The good news is, identity can be rewritten. Starting today, with how you think, how you speak, how you sit, how you walk. Every moment is a rehearsal for the future you've chosen. So begin now. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for signs. Decide who you are and act like it, not someday. Not when you feel like it. Now, because every time you do, you are casting a vote for the version of you that wealth respects. And wealth is watching. Always. So again, say it, write it, live it. I act from identity, not from need. Let it shape how you speak to others. Let it shape how you speak to yourself. Because the world listens to the tone you use in silence. If you speak to yourself like a man who doubts, you will live a life that reflects doubt. But if you speak like a king, like a builder, like a man who knows his place in the order of things, then even in stillness, you will begin to move mountains. Because the voice within is the architect, and once it's aligned, everything else falls into place. This is not theory, it is law. And when you live by law, life becomes predictable. Not always easy, but trustworthy. It becomes a dance between identity and manifestation, a rhythm between thought and reality. And the more consistent you are, the more seamless the dance becomes. So start your practice, not tomorrow, not next week. Now, take command of your identity, and your future will obey. The world does not respond to what you say you want. It responds to who you are. That is the great secret, hidden in plain sight. You can speak of wealth, of success, of freedom all day long. You can write your goals on the wall, repeat your affirmations in the mirror, and hope with all your might. But if your inner world is still ruled by hesitation, inconsistency, or confusion, then the outer world will reflect just that. Because money, true wealth, cannot be fooled. It does not obey mere words, it obeys structure. And that structure is not built with emotion alone, but with clarity, consistency, and discipline. You must become a person of alignment, not a person of performance. A person who does not just dream when it's convenient, but lives their principles when it's hard. When the noise rises, when the doubts scream, when the world doesn't applaud. It is in those moments that the world takes note, that money watches, that destiny leans in and whispers, "Let me see if he still holds the vision." And if you do, if you remain true when it would be easier to drift, then wealth begins to move toward you like a river finding its path to the sea. This is why so many people repeat the same cycles year after year. They think the problem is strategy or timing or lack of luck. But the real issue is identity drift. They start with a new idea, a fresh vision, and for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, they are consistent. They speak differently, they plan, they believe, but as soon as life applies pressure, they retreat. They slip back into old patterns, not because the dream was wrong, but because they did not anchor their identity. They were acting like the version of themselves they wanted to become, but they had not become it yet, and so they reverted. That's why I say repetition is not optional. It is vital, because identity is not created in a flash. It is carved over time, with every decision, every morning routine, every time you choose structure over chaos. And if you fail today, you do not start over, you resume, because every day you choose again. The identity roots itself deeper. Let us return to the law. The same way a farmer cannot expect to reap where he has not sown, you cannot expect the world to reward an identity you do not fully own. It may sound poetic, but it is painfully practical. If you want to attract the money, the relationships, the peace, the freedom you claim to desire, you must live in alignment with the person who already has those things. And yes, this may require sacrifice. But hear me clearly. You are never sacrificing pleasure. You are sacrificing limitation. You are not giving up your personality. You are shedding the version of you that kept you small. This is the price, and it is always worth it. Not because of what you get, but because of who you become in the process. Because once you become a person of order, of clear values and unwavering direction, the world bends to meet you, not out of pity, but out of principle. Because the law states that structure attracts prosperity, and the world does not break its own laws. I want to give you another law to speak, to write, to claim as your own. Let this be the phrase that shapes how you act today. And if it lands in your spirit, speak it aloud and type it in the comments to declare it as true. I move with discipline. I attract with certainty. Say it again, not to convince yourself, but to awaken the part of you that already believes it. Because that part has been waiting for you to stop overthinking and start becoming, waiting for you to stop wishing and start building, waiting for you to step into the role you were born for, not the one you settled into. Discipline is not the opposite of freedom. It is the foundation of it. Certainty is not arrogance. It is inner order. And when you move with both, you are no longer reacting to life. You are leading it. And leadership always attracts, not followers, not attention, but responsibility, wealth, legacy. So how does this look in your life? It looks like choosing routine over randomness. It looks like waking up with a plan, even if no one is watching. It looks like honoring your own word, not just when others are involved, but especially when it's just you and the silence. Because that's where the real work happens, the unseen work, the kind that builds muscles no one can see, but everyone can feel. You must build rituals that remind your mind who you are becoming. And these rituals don't have to be grand. They have to be repeated. Every day you write your goal is another vote for your future. Every day you sit in silence and visualize is another act of obedience to your vision. Every moment you choose intention over impulse is another brick in the foundation of your wealth. And one day you will look up and realize you are no longer faking it. You are living it. The man who creates wealth is not a different species. He is not more talented. He is not more blessed. He is simply more consistent, more willing to be bored by routine, more committed to clarity, more interested in alignment than applause. And while others chase shortcuts and secrets, he builds systems. He learns how to think. He learns how to plan. And because of that, he becomes inevitable. The same is true for you. Your results do not lie. They reflect exactly what you've been rehearsing in your mind and your behavior. And if those results are not what you desire, do not complain. Adjust, realign, rehearse something new, and stick with it. Because life does not reward the impulsive, it rewards the deliberate. You may be wondering, but what if I fall off track? You will. That's not the issue. The issue is, do you return? Do you recalibrate? Do you come back to the vision without shame? Because shame keeps you in the old identity. But discipline brings you home. The difference between those who win and those who wish lies not in talent but in their ability to return to the structure, over and over, until the structure becomes who they are, not just what they do. And when it becomes who you are, you no longer have to motivate yourself. You are simply living in rhythm, and rhythm creates results. So again, let this law be your compass today. I move with discipline. I attract with certainty. Let it guide your choices, your posture, your speech. Let it govern your calendar. Let it whisper to you when distraction calls. Because if you repeat this long enough, your body will start to obey. Your energy will begin to shift. And the world, which has always been listening, will finally have a signal strong enough to respond to. That's when the floodgates open. Not because you forced them, but because you finally tuned yourself to their frequency. Do not underestimate the power of a small, disciplined act done daily. It is these acts stacked in silence that build unstoppable men, unshakable women. It is these choices made with clarity that attract prosperity with ease. Not because you are chasing, but because you have become. So begin again today. Sharpen the structure, speak the law, and walk as one who knows the outcome is already set. There is a moment in every day when the world goes quiet, when the noise of others fades and the only voice left is your own. And it's in that moment, often early in the morning or late at night, when truth becomes loudest. It's there in that stillness that you must ask yourself, am I living today in alignment with the future I claim to desire? Because the truth is, most people live on autopilot. They repeat yesterday without question. They carry old emotions, old habits, old limits, like invisible weights, dragging them through another day that looks too much like the last. And then they wonder why life doesn't change, why success feels distant, why abundance is something they talk about but never touch. The answer is simple, though rarely easy. You cannot create a new future from an old identity. You must interrupt the cycle. You must disturb the rhythm of mediocrity with the sound of your own decision. Because the man who changes his day changes his life. And that change begins not with more effort, but with deeper awareness. You've been told to hustle, to grind, to push harder. But what if the problem isn't your effort, it's your direction? What if you're climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall? This is the tragedy of most lives, disciplined action toward the wrong target. And you see it everywhere. Men who work tirelessly but remain broke, not because they are lazy, but because their labor lacks strategy. Women who give their energy to people and places that drain them, not because they are unworthy, but because they forgot to check the price of their peace. So hear me when I say, energy without aim is wasted. Effort without clarity is noise. You must learn to pause, to zoom out, to ask, not just am I moving, but am I moving in the direction that builds the life I actually want? That question alone can save you a decade, and when asked consistently, it can build you a legacy. Let's bring this into focus with a principle, a law, one that separates the intentional from the impulsive, the aligned from the distracted. Say it aloud, write it down, and if you feel it, comment it below to lock it in. My energy builds what my clarity commands. Read it again. Your energy is not neutral. It is always building something. Every hour you spend, every decision you make, every thought you allow, it's building a reality. The question is whether that reality is the one you chose, and clarity is the only thing that gives your energy shape. Without clarity, your actions scatter, your days blur, your vision weakens. But with clarity, even a small act becomes a seed for greatness. A single phone call, a single post, a single conversation held with intention. It can change everything when it's aligned. So don't just move, move with vision. Don't just wake up with a target. Now, how do you create that clarity? You start with brutal honesty. Strip away what you think you should want. Strip away what they told you was realistic. And ask yourself, if there were no limits, no judgments, no fear, what life would I design? What habits would I build? What mission would I wake up for? What kind of wealth would I create, and how would I use it? Most people never ask these questions. They inherit desires from their environment. They chase goals that don't come from within. And then they wonder why they feel disconnected when they arrive. But the 5%, they think differently. They define success for themselves. They decide what matters. And once they know, they protect that vision with their time, their attention, and their associations. That's how clarity is formed. Not all at once, but piece by piece, decision by decision, until the fog lifts and the path reveals itself. There is a myth that clarity comes before action, that you must have the perfect vision before you take the first step. But in truth, clarity comes from action. You move, you test, you reflect, and each step gives you feedback. Each experience sharpens the picture. So if you're waiting for perfect clarity to begin, you never will. Start where you are. Do what you can see. Move in the general direction of your dream and adjust as you go. Because clarity is not a lightning bolt, it is a sunrise. Slow, gradual, but unstoppable, if you keep walking toward the light. So don't freeze, don't overthink. Begin. Begin with the best vision you have now, and trust that more will come as you walk. Because the law is simple. Motion creates insight. Not speculation, not analysis, motion. That is how you gain clarity that sticks. But motion must be paired with reflection. It is not enough to act. You must also pause. Ask yourself weekly, is this action moving me toward my desired identity? Or am I just staying busy? Because busyness is the enemy of clarity. It keeps you occupied but unfocused, productive but misaligned. So carve out time, every week, to zoom out, to review, to realign. The most successful people on earth are not those who do the most. They are those who know when to stop, when to pivot, and when to scale. And all of that comes from reflection, from stepping back, checking the compass, and adjusting the sails before the storm arrives. Because life will test your direction, and only those who check in regularly will remain on course. This is why I say treat your energy like capital. Would you invest your money blindly, without tracking the return? Then why do you invest your energy that way? Every conversation you enter, every piece of content you consume, every environment you dwell in, it's either a deposit or a drain. And if you are constantly drained, your clarity dies, your spirit dulls, your goals lose color. So, protect your energy the way the wealthy protect their time, with intention, with filters, with systems. And when you do, your mind clears, your body strengthens, your focus sharpens, and then you become dangerous. Not because of aggression, but because of precision. The world has too many people moving fast and blind. Be the one who moves slow and sharp. So say it again, and say it like you mean it. My energy builds what my clarity commands. This is not just a quote, it is a command to your subconscious. It is a reminder that you are not here to survive your days. You are here to sculpt them, to make each one a building block for the life you chose, not the life handed to you, not the life tolerated by others, the life you designed from vision, from alignment, from truth. That kind of life does not come from hoping. It comes from building, with words, with focus, with repeated clarity. And remember this, you do not need more time. You need more clarity, because when the vision is clear, the choices are easy. You stop debating. You stop hesitating. You stop asking for opinions. You already know. You move. You build. You rise. And the world, as it always has, begins to respond, not to your wants, but to your walk. There is a law that governs every breakthrough, every moment when a person steps out of the fog of uncertainty and into the clear path of prosperity. It is the law of personal responsibility, not the kind that blames or burdens, but the kind that liberates. It is the quiet internal declaration, if my life is to rise, it is up to me. This law does not ask who hurt you, it does not ask what's fair. It simply hands you the pen and says, write. And those who accept this law, who embrace the power to create rather than wait, are the ones the world calls lucky, gifted, chosen. But in truth, they are simply the ones who stopped outsourcing their destiny, who stopped waiting for perfect conditions, who realized that no one is coming to save them, and that's the best news they could ever hear. Because once you accept full authorship of your life, you stop negotiating with your excuses. You stop arguing for your limits, and you begin finally to build the life you said you wanted. There's a difference between saying I'm responsible and actually living as if that were true. Most people say it, but their actions tell another story. They blame the economy. They blame their upbringing. They blame time, luck, even God. But none of those forces hold the pen. You do. Every morning, with every decision, every thought, every habit, you are writing the story that you will someday look back on and call your life. And the question is, are you writing consciously, or are you letting someone else write it for you? The media, your peers, your old identity. The person who truly embraces responsibility does not just change their language. They change their posture. They no longer flinch when life hits them. They adjust. They don't beg for comfort. They build capacity. And in doing so, they become magnetic. Because nothing is more attractive than a person who owns their energy, owns their direction, and owns their outcomes. Let's make this clear with a new law. One that defines the builder, the producer, the sovereign mind. Say it aloud, carry it with you, and if it resonates, comment it below to claim it in full. I own the outcome. I am the source. This is more than motivation. It is structure. When you believe you are the source, you stop hoping and start designing. You stop waiting for opportunity and start preparing your ground. You stop asking, why isn't it happening yet? And start asking, what part of me still needs to rise? That question alone unlocks doors. Because the universe responds to ownership, not entitlement, not complaining, but ownership. The person who owns the outcome walks differently. They speak differently. They no longer point fingers. They point inward. And from that inward clarity, they project power into the world. Power that is steady, not shaken by noise, not swayed by moods, not thrown by resistance. And this is where many people fall short. They think the secret to success is external. A better job, a new system, a different strategy. But the real shift is internal. It's when you go from hoping to deciding, from doubting to declaring, from reacting to leading. That shift may not show up instantly in your bank account, but it shows up immediately in your posture, your eyes, your breath, your energy. And that energy, once grounded in ownership, becomes the magnet. It pulls opportunity to you. It signals to the world that you are not here to survive. You are here to shape, to build, to expand. But this power only activates when you stop looking for external causes and begin managing your internal responses. Because it's not the storm that determines your outcome. It's your sails. It's not the terrain, it's your map. And you hold the pen that draws it. You must understand, personal responsibility is not a burden, it is a weapon. It is how the greats rise in silence while the crowd complains. It is how empires are built, one decision at a time, often in obscurity, without applause. But the applause comes later. First comes discipline. First comes solitude. First comes a long string of days when no one is watching, but you still show up. Why? Because you decided that the outcome belongs to you. Not in theory, but in action. And that action, multiplied over time, compounds into results so obvious the world can't ignore you. This is not hype. This is how all greatness is born. Not through noise, but through responsibility. And let us not confuse this with perfection. To own the outcome does not mean you never fall. It means when you fall, you get back up faster. You learn quicker. You take the hit, recalibrate, and move again. Because the person who owns their life knows that failure is not fatal, it's feedback. It's information. And when you process it instead of personalize it, you grow stronger, sharper, more accurate. That's the power of ownership. It turns every loss into a lesson, every delay into data. And it keeps you moving forward while others freeze. That movement, that refusal to quit, is what builds momentum. And momentum, once it's on your side, can do more in 1 week than years of hoping ever could. Now let's make this practical. Ask yourself, what area of my life am I still outsourcing? Is it your finances, your health, your energy, your focus? Wherever you feel most out of control. That's often where you've handed off responsibility. And it's time to take it back, not with shame, not with guilt, but with intention. You say, this is mine now. I may not have caused every event, but I control how I respond. I own the outcome. That shift alone can make the next 12 months look nothing like the last 12. Because once you take the wheel, you begin to steer. And once you steer, the road opens up. That's not luck. That's alignment with law. So again, say it, own it, write it below. I own the outcome. I am the source. Let that phrase burn into your daily language. Let it become the frame through which you see everything. When a challenge appears, you don't ask who to blame. You ask, how do I rise? When an opportunity shows up, you don't doubt your worth. You step into it, because you've prepared for this. You are not surprised by success. You are structured for it. And when you live this way long enough, the world begins to respond differently. It sends you people, resources, and doors that match your posture. Not because of magic, but because of resonance. Like attracts like. And when you become the source, you draw power to you. And remember, personal responsibility is not a moment. It is a lifestyle. It is not a slogan. It is a system. One you apply to every area. Your money, your relationships, your thinking, your time. You become a person who manages energy like a steward, not a slave to impulse. You become someone others look to not for handouts, but for guidance. And you realize the reward is not just success. The reward is sovereignty, peace, pride, the quiet knowing that you are no longer living below your potential, but rising into it, one decision at a time. There is a truth most people never realize. Wealth is not just what you hold, it's what you're able to hold on to. And this difference matters, because many people touch money. They experience a raise, a windfall, a streak of success, but they lose it. Not because they are cursed, Not because they were never meant to have it, but because they lacked the container, the internal vessel, the mindset and systems that could retain, grow, and multiply what arrived. It's easy to think the goal is just to get the money, but the real goal is to become the kind of person who can keep it, protect it, and expand it. That is a completely different mindset. That mindset does not chase, it builds. It does not fear, it prepares. And when you prepare correctly, money stops being a visitor and starts becoming a resident. It no longer shows up occasionally. It begins to live with you, because you've created a home for it, a place of clarity, of vision, of order. But let's look even deeper. What does it mean to build a life that holds wealth? It means you've replaced emotional spending with strategic investment. It means you've replaced impulse with patience. It means that you've cultivated inner stillness, because people who panic with $100 will panic with 100,000. The amount does not change the man. The mindset changes the man. And when you understand this, you stop praying for more and start preparing for more. You understand that life is not holding anything back from you. It is simply waiting to see if you are ready. Can you lead? Can you manage? Can you multiply? That is what money watches. Not your charm, not your passion, not your struggle, but your structure, your repeatable rhythm, your control over what you already have. Because how you handle the small is exactly how you'll handle the large. This leads us to a new law, one that must be etched into your behavior, not just spoken but lived. Speak it aloud, write it down, and if it aligns with who you are becoming, comment it now. I build what I want to keep. That phrase is everything. It means you don't wish for wealth, you create a system to hold it. It means you don't hope for peace, you design your days to cultivate it. It means you don't beg for clarity, you remove what blurs your vision. This is what builders do. They don't live by chance, they live by pattern. And the reward for that discipline is not just more income, but more influence, more inner peace, and more longevity. Because in a world of people chasing outcomes, you become one of the few who are building foundations. Let's bring this closer. Look around your current environment, your finances, your routines, your relationships. Are they built to sustain growth, or do they collapse under pressure? Most people live at the edge of their capacity. One unexpected expense, one argument, one bad week, and the whole system crashes. Why? Because they never built for scale. They never asked, what will this look like when life expands? They built for the now, not the next. And so their lives become fragile. But you, if you're listening now, are called to build differently. To architect your time, your money, your emotions like a leader. Because leaders don't build what looks good in calm weather. They build for storms. And because of that, they endure. And not only endure, they thrive when others fall apart. You might think, but I don't have much to manage. That's exactly when the discipline matters most. Because if you can manage a little, life will trust you with more. This is not just a moral idea, it is a universal law. Just as a tree will only grow roots where there's fertile soil, so too will wealth only grow in a life that has been cultivated to hold it. If you squandered $10, why would life hand you $10,000? Not as punishment, but as protection. And the same is true for time, for influence, for trust. Life matches your level of stewardship. And when you take care of what you have, multiply what's in your hands and eliminate what drains your resources, then doors open. Not because you forced them, but because you finally became aligned with what you said you wanted. So how do you become that kind of person? You start by noticing the leaks. Where are you wasting time that builds nothing? Where are you spending money that moves you no closer to your goals? Where are you giving energy to people or habits that do not multiply your future? Once you see it, cut it. No emotion, just discipline. Builders do not weep over broken bricks. They replace them. They rebuild. They refocus. And because of that, they rise faster than those who are still crying over what used to be. Do not mourn the cost of discipline. Mourn the cost of delay. Because every day you live without a plan, you are spending energy on maintenance instead of progress. And maintenance may keep you afloat, but it will never make you rise. Let's get practical. Choose one area of your life today and build a system. If it's money, make a spending plan that reflects your future, not your fears. If it's energy, design a morning routine that elevates your clarity and protects your mind. If it's time, use your calendar like a blueprint, not a bucket. Block your hours with intention. If it's your circle, assess who multiplies your momentum and who drains it, and adjust accordingly. Systems are how builders stay powerful when motivation fades. Systems are how vision becomes reality. And the person who builds systems will always outperform the person who waits for inspiration. So start building, start now. And remember, the reward is not just the result. The reward is becoming the kind of person who never falls apart. Say it again, write it again, live it again. I build what I want to keep. That is the way of the 5%. The way of the structured, the deliberate, the grounded. In a culture addicted to reaction, you become a master of rhythm. In a world chasing dopamine, you become anchored in design. And when you build this way long enough, the world has no choice but to follow your lead. Not because you shouted, but because your results became undeniable. Your life will speak for you. Your systems will prove you. And your legacy will be one of order, of excellence, of wealth that not only arrives but stays. This is how it's done. Not through chaos, not through chance, but through conscious building. One choice at a time, one habit at a time, one structure at a time. And when the world sees the strength of your foundation, it will trust you with the heights. There comes a moment in every journey where the principles must leave the page and enter your bones, where the truths you've heard are no longer ideas, but standards, where what began as inspiration becomes identity. That moment is now. If you've listened this far, it means something inside you has already awakened. The world may not see it yet, but you feel it. The shift, the old patterns are cracking. The old excuses are wearing thin. The part of you that used to delay, distract, and deny has grown quiet. And in its place is a new voice, firmer, clearer, more committed. That voice is not asking for permission. It's not waiting for perfect timing. It's simply saying, it's time. Time to act. Time to speak. Time to embody what you've declared over and over again. Because repetition without embodiment is just noise. But when your behavior matches your beliefs, then life responds, not in whispers, but in waves. Let us return to the foundation. You become what you think about. That has always been the truth. Not what you casually think about, but what you dwell on, feel deeply, and move toward with conviction. What you allow to dominate your mind will, without fail, dominate your life. If you think wealth, structure, peace, and service, you will build those things into your world. If you think fear, lack, complaint, and envy, you will find those things no matter where you go. You see, the environment is never neutral. It mirrors the inner temperature of the one who walks through it. This is why two men can enter the same opportunity. One thrives, one fails. The difference is not the world, it is their dominant thought. So as you leave this message and step into the next season of your life, ask yourself, what thoughts will I now guard? What ideas will I now reject? And what identity will I now act upon without hesitation? I want you to internalize a final law. Speak it aloud. Stamp it into your rituals, your routines, your rhythms. Say it, type it, and carry it. I am the cause. I am the standard. I am the signal. That is not a quote to remember. It is a role to step into. When you walk through life as the cause, you no longer wait for motivation. You create momentum. When you live as the standard, you no longer ask what's allowed. You decide what's possible. And when you become the signal, the world begins to reorganize around your energy, your clarity, your action. People feel it. Opportunities open. Noise fades. Because you are no longer reacting to the world, you are generating the frequency that bends it. And this is not theory. This is what every great man, every woman of power, every timeless leader has done. Knowingly or not, they became the cause. They became the standard. They became the signal. You must now decide what kind of life you're done apologizing for, what kind of power you're done denying. Because the world will not beg you to lead it. It will not hand you a crown. But the moment you crown yourself in thought, in language, and in action, the world notices, quietly, immediately. And once you claim that ground within, you never go back. You don't regress. You don't shrink. You build, daily, intentionally, with order, with precision, with grace. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more builders, more men and women who carry their inner world with reverence, who hold their standards higher than the distractions, and who refuse to settle for the emotional fast food served to the masses. You are not one of them. You are rare, and that rarity is responsibility. I leave you with this final truth. Everything you've heard in this message, everything you felt inside your body is truth. It only becomes real if you act. Nothing changes without action. You can write the quotes, you can save the video, you can nod your head in agreement. But if you do not wake up tomorrow and make a new decision, then nothing changes. All power is in the next step, not the 10th, not the perfect, the next. Whether it's opening the notebook and writing your new plan, whether it's cutting off a distraction, whether it's standing taller, breathing deeper, and speaking with more clarity. The next step is the only one that matters, because it's the only one that's real. And once you take it, you signal to your subconscious, to your creator, and to life itself, I am no longer waiting. I am no longer pretending. I am no longer bound by the past. I build forward now. So what happens now? You live it. You embody it. You hold the laws daily. You return to them, not when life is calm, but especially when life is loud. You speak the truths even when the old you wants to argue. You show up with structure, even when chaos tempts you to quit. Because the war is not with the world. It's not with others. It's not even with circumstance. The only war is between the version of you that wants comfort and the version of you that was born to lead. Let that second version win, and let him win every morning, every night, every decision. Not because it's easy, but because it's right. Now, if this message has reached you, if it has sparked something you know you must honor, I ask you to do two things. First, comment below the final law. I am the cause. I am the standard. I am the signal. Let that declaration live beyond the moment. And second, share this message. Share it not for vanity, but for impact. Share it so that others, those who are ready, those who are hungry, those who have waited for someone to speak truth with clarity, can hear it. You never know whose life might change because you chose to echo truth instead of staying silent. This is how movements start. This is how power multiplies. One voice, one step, one signal at a time. You now know the laws. You have the structure, the mindset, the rhythm, and the responsibility. There is nothing more to study. Nothing more to wait for. Now is the time to build. Now is the time to rise, because money has already been watching, and it's no longer deciding if it likes you. It's deciding if it trusts you. So live as one who is trusted. Walk like one who cannot be shaken. Speak like one who carries truth, not for attention, but for alignment. And from this moment forward, may the rest of your life be the echo of a single powerful decision. I will never again dim the light that was placed within me, to guide others out of the dark.